Zara's crystalline fingers traced the edge of her data tablet as she watched Marcus from across the research station's main corridor. 3 months ago, he would have noticed her gaze and flashed that warm smile that made her bioluminescent patches glow with what humans called happiness. Now he walked past without even a glance, his shoulders tense and his usual confident stride replaced by something that looked almost like retreat. The Calorian female's head tendrils twitched with confusion as she observed the human who had become such an important part of her life aboard the joint research station orbiting Kepler 442b. Marcus. Shan had been assigned as her cultural liaison when she first arrived on the station 18 months ago, part of the ambitious galactic research initiative that brought together 12 different species to study potentially habitable worlds. At first, Zara had been skeptical of working so closely with a human. Her species had heard the stories about Earth's inhabitants, their unpredictable emotions, their tendency toward violence, their short lifespans that made them seem almost frantic in their pursuits. But Marcus had surprised her from their very first meeting. Where she expected aggression, she found patience. Where she anticipated ignorance, she discovered a brilliant mind that absorbed information about her culture with genuine fascination. He had spent countless hours helping her understand human customs and languages, never showing frustration when she struggled with concepts that seemed natural to his species. In return, she had shared the philosophical teachings of her people and the advanced biotechnology that had made Calorians one of the most respected species in the galactic community. Their working relationship had evolved into something deeper, not romantic love as humans understood it, but a profound bond of mutual respect and affection that both species could appreciate. That bond now felt like it was cracking apart, and Zara couldn't understand why. She closed her tablet and decided to approach him directly. Her people valued straightforward communication, and perhaps Marcus was simply dealing with some stress that could be resolved through honest conversation. She caught up with him near the hydroponics bay, where the soft green light from the growing plants cast gentle shadows on the metallic walls. "Marcus," she called softly, her voice carrying the musical quality that all Calorians possessed. "May I speak with you?" He stopped walking but didn't turn around immediately. When he finally faced her, Zara was struck by how tired he looked. The vibrant energy that had always surrounded him seemed diminished, as if someone had turned down his internal light. His dark eyes, which had always met hers with warmth and attention, now seemed to look through her rather than at her. "I'm pretty busy today, Zara," he said, his voice flat in a way that made her chest cavity ache. "Maybe we can talk later." "You have said that for the past 2 weeks," she replied, her head tendrils shifting to express her concern. "I am beginning to think that later is a human concept that means never." For just a moment, something flickered across Marcus's face. Pain, perhaps, or regret. But it was gone so quickly that Zara wondered if she had imagined it. "It's not like that. I just have a lot on my mind right now." Zara took a step closer, noting how Marcus seemed to stiffen at her approach. This was perhaps the most confusing part of his recent behavior. Humans were naturally tactile creatures, and Marcus had never shied away from the casual contact that had become normal between them. A hand on the shoulder during conversation, standing close while reviewing data. Even the occasional embrace that humans use to express comfort or congratulation. "Is it something I have done?" she asked, her voice smaller than she intended. "If I have offended you or violated some human custom that I do not understand, please tell me so that I may correct it." "No," Marcus said quickly, and for a moment his voice carried its old warmth. "No, Zara, you haven't done anything wrong. You could never. This isn't about you." "Then what is it about?" she pressed. "Marcus, we have worked together for over a year. We have shared meals, conversations, even some of our deepest thoughts about our respective species and cultures. I thought we had built what humans call friendship. But now you treat me as if I'm a stranger, or worse, as if my presence causes you discomfort." Marcus ran a hand through his black hair, a gesture Zara had learned indicated stress or frustration. "It's complicated, Zara. There are things. Sometimes people need space to work through personal issues. But why must you work through them alone?" Zara asked. "Among my people, we believe that burdens shared are burdens lessened." "Is this not also true for humans?" "Sometimes," Marcus admitted, "but not always. Sometimes sharing a burden just spreads the pain around. There was something in the way he said the word pain that made Zara's bioluminescent patches pulse with alarm. It wasn't just emotional pain he was referring to. She was certain of that now. Something was wrong, something more serious than work stress or cultural misunderstandings. "Marcus," she said gently, "I am not as fragile as you may think. My species has endured hardships and losses. We understand pain. And we understand that healing often requires the support of others. Whatever you are facing, perhaps I can help." For a long moment, Marcus just stared at her, and Zara thought she saw his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. But then he shook his head and stepped backward, putting more distance between them. "I have to go," he said. "My shift in the lab starts in 10 minutes. Before Zara could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone among the soft green glow of the growing plants. She watched until he disappeared around a corner, her head tendrils drooping with an emotion that humans might recognize as heartbreak. Something was very wrong with Marcus, and despite his clear desire to handle it alone, Zara was determined to find out what it was. Her people had a saying, "Truth hidden in darkness grows like a poison. Truth brought to light becomes medicine." She only hoped that whatever truth Marcus was hiding, it wasn't already too late to heal the damage it was causing to both of them. Zara spent the next 3 days observing Marcus from a distance, trying to piece together clues from his behavior. As a xenobiologist, she was trained to notice patterns and changes in biological systems, and she applied that same analytical approach to understanding her human colleague. What she discovered only deepened her concern. Marcus was eating less. She noticed him picking at his food in the communal dining area, pushing vegetables around his plate without actually consuming much. His sleep patterns seemed disrupted too. She had seen him wandering the station's corridors during what should have been his rest period, looking pale and exhausted. Most troubling of all, she had observed him visiting the medical bay twice in the past week, always during shift changes when fewer people would notice. The medical bay visits particularly worried her. Humans were notoriously reluctant to seek medical attention unless something was seriously wrong. Marcus had told her this himself when she had marveled at how quickly her own people addressed even minor health concerns. Zara made a decision that went against her usual respectful nature. She would speak to Dr. Sarah Martinez, the station's chief medical officer and one of the few humans who seemed to understand the importance of interspecies cooperation. She found Dr. Martinez in her office, reviewing patient files on her holographic display. The human woman looked up as Zara entered, her expression shifting to one of professional attention mixed with genuine warmth. Sarah was in her 50s with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that held both intelligence and compassion. "Zara, good to see you," Dr. Martinez said, gesturing to a chair that had been specially designed to accommodate Calorian physiology. "What brings you to my corner of the station?" Zara settled into the chair, her head tendrils betraying her nervousness despite her attempt to appear calm. "Dr. Martinez, I need to ask you about Marcus Chen." The doctor's expression immediately became more guarded. "You know I can't discuss specific patient information, even with close colleagues." "I am not asking for details about his medical condition," Zara said carefully. "I am asking as someone who cares about his well-being. He has been different lately, distant. I am concerned that he may be ill, and I want to know if there is anything I can do to help." Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her words. Finally, she leaned forward slightly. "Zara, I can see that you care about Marcus, and I know the two of you have developed a strong working relationship. But sometimes people need space to process difficult situations. The best thing you can do for him right now might be to respect his privacy." "But that is exactly what troubles me," Zara replied, her bioluminescent patches flickering with agitation. "Among my people, when someone withdraws from their community during times of hardship, it is often a sign that they are preparing for—" She paused, searching for the right human words. "For an ending? Is Marcus in danger?" Dr. Martinez's eyes widened slightly. "Zara, I can assure you that Marcus is not contemplating self-harm, if that's what you're worried about. But I really can't say more than that." "Then there is something wrong," Zara said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and renewed worry. "He is ill." The doctor neither confirmed nor denied this, but her silence spoke volumes. "Zara, All I can tell you is that Marcus is a good man who is trying to handle a difficult situation in the way he thinks is best. He's not doing it to hurt you." After leaving the medical bay, Zara felt more frustrated than ever. The confirmation that something was medically wrong with Marcus only intensified her need to help. But she was running up against human concepts of privacy and individual struggle that her communal species found difficult to understand. She decided to try a different approach. If Marcus wouldn't talk to her directly, perhaps she could learn something from their mutual colleagues. She sought out Elena Vasquez, the station's communications officer who had become friendly with both of them over their shared love of ancient Earth music. Elena was in the observation deck, watching the planet below slowly rotate. The blues and greens of its continents reminded Zara of Marcus's descriptions of Earth, and she felt another pang of worry for her friend. "Elena," Zara said as she approached.
"May I join you?"
"Of course," Elena replied, though she seemed distracted. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" Marcus was here yesterday, staring at the planet for almost an hour, said it reminded him of home. "He has been spending time here often?" Zara asked, settling beside Elena at the viewing port. "More than usual," Elena confirmed. "Actually, he's been acting kind of strange lately. Quieter than normal. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just gave me that smile he uses when he doesn't want to talk about something." Zara's head tendrils curled with recognition. She knew that smile well. Marcus had used it with her several times in recent weeks. "Elena," Zara said carefully, "has Marcus mentioned anything about leaving the station?" Elena turned to look at her sharply. "Leaving? No, why would you think that?" "I am not sure," Zara admitted. "But his behavior suggests someone who is preparing for something, saying goodbye perhaps without actually saying the words." "That's ridiculous," Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. "His assignment here runs for another 2 years. He loves this work." "Yes," Zara agreed quietly. "That is what makes his behavior so concerning." That evening, Zara made another attempt to reach Marcus directly. She waited outside his quarters until she heard him returning from his shift, then stepped out to intercept him in the corridor. "Marcus, please," she said before he could retreat. "I know you are trying to protect me from something, but your withdrawal is causing me more pain than whatever truth you are hiding could possibly cause." Marcus stopped walking, his shoulders sagging slightly. For a moment, Zara thought he might finally open up to her, but then he straightened and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of love and loss that made her chest cavity ache. "Zara," he said softly, "some truths can't be unhidden once they're shared. Some knowledge changes everything, and not always for the better. I'm asking you to trust me on this." "But I do trust you," she replied, stepping closer. "That is exactly why I cannot understand why you will not trust me in return." Marcus reached out as if to touch her face, then caught himself and pulled his hand back. "Because trusting you with this would be the cruelest thing I could do to someone I care about." With that, he turned and entered his quarters, leaving Zara standing alone in the corridor with more questions than ever. Whatever was happening to Marcus, whatever truth he was hiding, it was something he believed would hurt her to know. But Zara was beginning to realize that not knowing was hurting her more than any truth possibly could. She was determined to find answers, even if Marcus refused to give them to her willingly. Her people had not become one of the galaxy's most respected species by backing down from difficult challenges, and she would not start now. Tomorrow, she would begin a more thorough investigation. If Marcus would not trust her with his truth, she would find it herself. Zara's determination to uncover the truth led her to take actions that went against her naturally respectful nature. She had spent hours researching human privacy laws and station protocols, looking for legitimate ways to access information about Marcus's condition. What she found was a bureaucratic maze designed specifically to prevent the kind of investigation she wanted to conduct. However, her position as a senior xenobiologist gave her access to certain databases that might contain clues. She decided to start with the station's resource allocation records, reasoning that any medical treatment would require specialized equipment or supplies that would show up in the logistics reports. Working late in her laboratory while most of the station slept, Zara pulled up the medical supply requisitions for the past month. Most entries were routine: standard medications, diagnostic equipment maintenance, basic surgical supplies. But 3 items stood out to her trained eye: an order for a specific type of neural imaging array, a request for experimental cellular regeneration compounds, and most tellingly, a requisition for pain management protocols typically used in terminal care. The neural imaging equipment was particularly significant. Zara's knowledge of human biology was extensive, and she knew that such specialized arrays were only used when doctors suspected severe neurological damage or degenerative conditions. Combined with the pain management protocols, the pattern suggested something serious affecting Marcus's nervous system. Her research was interrupted by footsteps in the corridor outside her lab. Zara quickly closed the database files and pretended to be working on her own research projects. To her surprise, the footsteps stopped outside her door, and a moment later, Marcus appeared in the doorway. He looked terrible. Even in the dim lighting of her lab, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features, the slight tremor in his hands that he was trying to hide, and the way he seemed to be favoring his left side. "Zara?" he said, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "What are you doing here so late?" "I could ask you the same question," she replied, noting how he gripped the doorframe for support. "Are you unable to sleep?" Marcus stepped into her lab, moving more carefully than usual. "Something like that. I saw the light and thought, I wanted to make sure you were okay." Even now, even when he was clearly struggling with his own problems, Marcus was concerned about her well-being. The realization made Zara's bioluminescent patches pulse with a complex mix of affection and frustration. "Marcus," she said gently, "you are in pain." It wasn't a question, and Marcus didn't try to deny it. Instead, he lowered himself into a chair near her workstation, the movement clearly causing him discomfort. "It's manageable," he said, which was probably the most honest thing he had said to her in weeks. Zara moved closer, her analytical mind cataloging the subtle signs of his condition, the slight asymmetry in his facial expressions, the way he held his head as if movement caused dizziness, the barely perceptible weakness in his left hand. "You have a neurological condition," she said softly. Marcus looked up at her sharply, and she saw the moment when his carefully maintained facade finally cracked. "How did you—" "I am a xenobiologist, Marcus. I study life forms and their biological processes. I have been observing you for weeks, and the signs are becoming more obvious." She paused, then added more gently, "Also, I may have looked at some resource allocation records." "Zara," Marcus said, his voice heavy with resignation, "you shouldn't have done that." "Why?" she asked, settling into a chair across from him. "Because you wanted to suffer alone? Because you thought it would be easier for me not to know?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because there's nothing anyone can do about it." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She had suspected that Marcus was seriously ill, but hearing him confirm what sounded like a terminal diagnosis made the situation devastatingly real. "Tell me," she said simply. Marcus looked up at her, and she saw years of friendship and affection warring with his desire to protect her from this knowledge. Finally, he sighed deeply. "It's called Kiernan's syndrome," he said. "It's a rare neurological condition that affects about 1 in every 50 million humans. It causes progressive deterioration of the nervous system, starting with motor functions and eventually affecting cognitive abilities and autonomic systems." Zara felt her head tendrils droop as she processed this information. "How long?" "The doctors estimate 6 to 8 months before I'm unable to perform my duties here. Maybe a year before." He couldn't finish the sentence. "This is why you have been pushing me away," Zara said, understanding flooding through her. "You thought it would be easier for me if we were not close when I die, yes," Marcus said bluntly. "Zara, I've seen what humans go through when they watch someone they care about deteriorate from this kind of disease. I couldn't bear the thought of putting you through that." Zara was quiet for several minutes, processing not just the medical information, but the emotional complexity of Marcus's decision. Finally, she looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Marcus," she said, "among my people there is a concept that has no direct translation to your language. The closest human term might be gift burden. The idea that caring for someone during their greatest need is both a heavy responsibility and an honor that brings meaning to both lives." "Zara, I don't want you to feel obligated. No, this is not about obligation," she interrupted. "This is about choice. You have made a choice to face this alone because you think it protects me, but you did not ask what I would choose. Marcus looked at her with surprise. What would you choose? To stand with my friend during the most difficult time of his life, she said without hesitation. To use whatever knowledge and resources I have to make his remaining time as meaningful as possible. And perhaps, she paused, her scientist's mind already working through possibilities. Perhaps to explore whether Calorian biotechnology might offer options that human medicine has not considered. Zara, Dr. Martinez has already researched every possible treatment. Kiernan's syndrome is essentially incurable. Incurable by human medicine, Zara corrected. But my people have been studying neurological regeneration for centuries. Our biological understanding evolved along different paths than yours. What is impossible for one species may be merely difficult for another. For the first time in weeks, Zara saw something that looked like hope flicker in Marcus's eyes, but almost immediately he shook his head. I can't let you do that, he said. I can't let you put your career, your research, everything at risk for something that probably won't work anyway. Marcus, Zara said, moving her chair closer to his, you are not letting me do anything. I am choosing to do it. There is a difference. She reached out and carefully took his hand in hers, noting the slight tremor but also the warmth that was so fundamentally human. You have spent over a year helping me understand your species. You have shown me kindness, patience, and friendship that I will treasure for the rest of my life. Now allow me to show you what friendship means to my people. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, and Zara saw tears gathering in his eyes, another uniquely human expression of emotion that she had come to understand and appreciate. What if it doesn't work? He asked quietly. Then we will have tried, Zara replied. And in trying, we will have honored the bond between us. But Marcus, what if it does work? What if the answer to your condition lies in the collaboration between our species? Can you really choose to give up without exploring that possibility? For the first time in weeks, Marcus squeezed her hand instead of pulling away. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Zara felt something that humans called hope. The next morning found Zara and Marcus in her laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing the complex neural pathways affected by Kiernan's syndrome. Marcus had provided his complete medical records, and Zara was studying them with the intense focus that had made her one of the galaxy's leading xenobiologists. The human approach has been to try to slow the degeneration, Zara explained, manipulating the three-dimensional brain scan floating between them. But my people would approach this differently. We would focus on regeneration rather than preservation. Marcus watched as she highlighted specific areas of neural damage. The doctors said regeneration was impossible with this type of nerve death. Impossible for human neurology, yes, Zara agreed. But you must understand, my species evolved from organisms that could regrow entire limbs, even portions of our central nervous systems. Our medical science developed along completely different lines than yours. She called up another display, this one showing the cellular structure of Calorian nerve tissue. Marcus stared in fascination at the complex organic machinery that bore little resemblance to human neurons. These are neural stem cells from my species, Zara explained. They remain active throughout our entire lives, constantly repairing and regenerating damaged tissue. In theory, they could be modified to work with human neural chemistry. In theory, Marcus repeated carefully. Yes, Zara admitted. This has never been attempted before. Cross-species neural tissue transplantation is theoretical at best and potentially dangerous at worst. But Marcus, the alternative is death, he finished quietly. I understand the risks. Zara, the question is whether your research council will approve such an experimental procedure. Zara's head tendrils curled in what Marcus had learned was her equivalent of a determined smile. I have already sent a preliminary proposal to the Calorian Medical Ethics Board. I also contacted Dr. Threnody, my former mentor, who specialized in interspecies biology. She is reviewing the theoretical framework now. Marcus looked at her with amazement. You did all that since last night? I do not sleep as much as humans, Zara said simply. And once I decide on a course of action, I prefer to move quickly. Over the next several days, Marcus watched as Zara threw herself into the research with an intensity that both impressed and worried him. She worked 18-hour shifts, analyzing his brain scans alongside Calorian neural regeneration studies. developing theoretical models for how the treatment might work. Dr. Martinez visited them on the third day, finding Zara hunched over her workstation while Marcus tried to convince her to take a break. "Zara," Dr. Martinez said gently, "you look like you haven't slept in days." "Sleep is inefficient when there is important work to be done," Zara replied without looking up from her displays. Dr. Martinez exchanged a glance with Marcus. "May I see what you're working on?" For the next hour, Zara explained her proposed treatment protocol. It involved harvesting specialized stem cells from her own nervous system, modifying them at the genetic level to be compatible with human neural chemistry, then introducing them directly into Marcus's brain where they would hopefully begin regenerating the damaged tissue. Dr. Martinez listened with growing amazement and concern. "Zara, this is incredible work, but the risks are substantial." "Yes," Zara acknowledged. "There is a possibility of immune rejection, neural toxicity, or failure to integrate properly. But Dr. Martinez, the current prognosis is 100% certain death within a year. Any risk that offers a different outcome is worth considering." "What does your medical board say?" Dr. Martinez asked. "They have given preliminary approval for laboratory testing," Zara said, her bioluminescent patches flickering with excitement. "If the initial cellular compatibility studies show promise, they will consider approving a clinical trial." Marcus felt a complex mix of hope and fear. The idea that there might be a way to survive Kiernan's syndrome was almost too wonderful to believe. But he was also terrified of the risks Zara would be taking to help him. "Zara," he said quietly, "what does this procedure involve for you?" She turned to look at him, and he saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten with concern. "The neural stem cells must come from an active nervous system," she explained. "The procedure to harvest them is not without risk." "What kind of risk?" Dr. Martinez asked sharply. Zara was quiet for a moment. "Among my people, we call it gift sharing. It involves temporarily suppressing portions of my own neural function while the stem cells are extracted and processed. There is a small possibility of permanent damage to my nervous system." "How small?" Marcus demanded. "Perhaps 5%, Zara said, though something in her manner suggested she was being optimistic. Marcus stood up abruptly, his movement causing a slight stumble as his condition affected his balance. "Absolutely not. Zara, I will not let you risk your life for mine." "It is not your choice to make," Zara said calmly, "just as it was not my choice when you decided to face your illness alone." "That's different," Marcus protested. "I was trying to protect you from emotional pain. This is asking you to risk actual physical harm." Zara stood as well, moving to face him directly. "Marcus, do you remember what you told me when I first arrived on this station? You said that humans believe some things are worth any risk. Protecting those you care about, advancing knowledge that could help others, standing up for what is right even when it is dangerous." "I remember," Marcus said softly. "This is worth the risk to me," Zara continued, "not just because of our friendship, though that alone would be enough, but because this research could revolutionize treatment for neurological conditions across multiple species. The knowledge we gain could help thousands of people in the future." Dr. Martinez had been listening to this exchange with growing understanding. "You're both talking about this as if it's a choice between Marcus's life and Zara's safety. But that's not really what this is about, is it?" Both Marcus and Zara looked at her questioningly. "This is about trust," Dr. Martinez continued. "Marcus, you trust Zara's scientific abilities enough to believe she might actually solve this problem. And Zara, you trust Marcus's friendship enough to take significant risks to save his life. The question isn't whether this is dangerous, of course it is. The question is whether you trust each other enough to face that danger together." Marcus looked at Zara, seeing in her alien features the same determination that had driven humanity to explore the stars, despite countless risks. And Zara looked at Marcus, seeing in his concern for her the same selfless protection instinct that had made humans such valued allies across the galaxy. "All right," Marcus said finally, "but we do this together every step of the way. No more secrets, no more protecting each other from difficult truths." "Agreed," Zara said, her head tendrils curling with satisfaction. Dr. Martinez smiled. "Good, because you're going to need all the support you can get. I've been reviewing the preliminary data, and while this is definitely experimental medicine at its most cutting edge, it's also some of the most promising research I've ever seen." That evening, as they worked late in the laboratory once again, Marcus found himself watching Zara with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. She had taken on an enormous challenge. Not just the scientific complexity of developing an entirely new treatment, but the personal risk of the procedure itself. "Zara," he said during a quiet moment, "why are you really doing this?" She looked up from her genetic sequencing display. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I understand about friendship and advancing medical knowledge. But there's something else, isn't there? Something more personal." Zara was quiet for a long moment. Her bioluminescent patches pulsing with what Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. "Among my people," she said finally, "we believe that every being we encounter changes us in some way. Usually these changes are small, a new perspective, a different way of thinking about a problem. But sometimes, rarely, we meet someone who changes the fundamental way we understand life itself." She turned to face him fully. "Marcus, in working with you, I have learned things about courage, hope, and compassion that I could never have learned from my own species alone. The idea of losing you, it is unacceptable to me." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Zara, I am not doing this just to save your life," she continued. "I am doing this to save the person who taught me what it truly means to be alive." 3 weeks after beginning their collaboration, Zara and Marcus stood in the station's most advanced medical laboratory, surrounded by equipment that represented the cutting edge of both human and Calorian biotechnology. The preliminary cellular compatibility tests had exceeded all expectations. Zara's modified neural stem cells not only survived in human tissue cultures, but actually showed signs of successful integration and regeneration. Dr. Threnody, Zara's mentor, had arrived from the Calorian homeworld 2 days earlier. The elderly scientist's presence filled the laboratory with an aura of calm authority that helped ease some of Marcus's nervousness about the procedure they were about to attempt. "The cellular modifications are stable," Dr. Threnody announced, reviewing the latest test results. "Young Zara's work has been exceptional. The stem cells show no signs of rejection markers and are demonstrating appropriate neural growth patterns in the human tissue samples." Marcus watched as Zara's bioluminescent patches flickered with pride and anxiety. Despite her confidence in the science, he knew she was nervous about the next phase, the actual extraction of stem cells from her own nervous system. "Are you certain about the harvesting procedure?" Dr. Martinez asked Dr. Threnody. "The risks to Zara are manageable with proper precautions," Dr. Threnody assured her. "We have performed similar procedures on Caloria for decades, though never for the purpose of cross-species treatment. The key is maintaining precise neural monitoring throughout the extraction process." The procedure had been scheduled for the following morning, giving everyone time to make final preparations. That evening, Marcus found himself unable to concentrate on anything other than the risks Zara was taking for him. He wandered the station's corridors, eventually ending up in the observation deck where he had spent so many hours contemplating his mortality. He wasn't surprised when Zara found him there, though he was startled by how tired she looked. The past weeks of intensive research had taken their toll on her. "Unable to sleep?" she asked, settling beside him at the viewing port. "Something like that," Marcus replied. "Zara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Always," she said simply. "What are the real odds that this procedure will work?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, watching the planet slowly rotate below them. "The cellular compatibility tests suggest a 60 to 70% chance of successful neural integration," she said finally. "But Marcus, successful integration does not guarantee complete recovery. In the best-case scenario, we might halt the progression of your condition and reverse some of the existing damage. In the worst case, the treatment fails and I die anyway," Marcus finished. "Or the treatment works partially, giving you more time but not full recovery," Zara added. "There are many variables we cannot predict." Marcus nodded, having expected this answer. "And what are the real risks to you?" This time Zara's pause was longer. "Dr. Threnody believes the procedure carries a 15 to 20% risk of permanent neural damage to my system, possibly affecting my cognitive abilities or motor functions." Marcus felt his stomach drop. This was significantly higher than the 5% risk she had originally mentioned. "Zara, I lied about the numbers before," she admitted. "I knew that if you understood the true risks, you would refuse to allow the procedure." "You're damn right I would refuse," Marcus said, turning to face her. Zara, I can't let you do this. 20% chance of permanent damage? That's 1 in 5 odds that you'll be hurt trying to save me. And 100% certainty that you will die if we do nothing. Zara replied firmly. Marcus, I have made my choice. Do not ask me to abandon someone I care about simply because there are risks involved. They sat in silence for several minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Marcus spoke again. What if the situation were reversed? He asked. What if you were dying and I could save you by risking my own life? Would you let me do it? Zara considered this carefully. Yes, she said eventually. Because I would understand that allowing someone you care about to help you is its own form of courage. The next morning, the medical bay was transformed into a surgical suite equipped with both human and Calorian medical technology. Zara lay on a specialized table that could monitor her unique physiology, while Dr. Threnody prepared the neural extraction equipment. Marcus sat nearby, connected to monitoring equipment that would track his neurological functions throughout the procedure. If the stem cell harvesting was successful, the modified cells would be introduced directly into his brain through a minimally invasive procedure that Dr. Martinez would perform. Remember, Dr. Threnody said to Zara, if you experience any unusual sensations, cognitive disruption, motor function loss, memory fragmentation, you must tell us immediately. Zara nodded, though Marcus could see the tension in her bioluminescent patches. I understand. And Marcus, Dr. Martinez added, the integration process may cause temporary neurological symptoms, headaches, dizziness, possibly some confusion. This is normal and should resolve within a few hours. We're really doing this, Marcus said, as much to himself as to anyone else. We are, Zara confirmed, reaching over to squeeze his hand. Together. The first phase of the procedure went smoothly. Dr. Threnody carefully extracted the neural stem cells from Zara's nervous system while monitoring her brain activity for any signs of distress. Zara remained conscious throughout, describing the strange sensations of having portions of her neural network temporarily suppressed. It feels like parts of my thoughts are sleeping, she explained to Marcus during the extraction. Not painful, just absent. The modified stem cells were immediately processed through a biointegration chamber that would prepare them for introduction into Marcus's brain. The entire process took nearly 4 hours, during which both patients remained stable and alert. Extraction complete, Dr. Threnody announced finally. Zara's neural functions are returning to normal parameters, and the stem cells are showing excellent viability. Now came the most critical phase. Dr. Martinez used a precision surgical laser to create tiny access points in Marcus's skull, through which the modified stem cells would be introduced directly to the areas of greatest damage. You should feel a slight pressure, Dr. Martinez told Marcus as she began the procedure. Try to stay as still as possible. Marcus focused on Zara's face as he felt the strange sensation of foreign cells being placed directly into his brain. Her bioluminescent patches were glowing with what he had learned indicated intense concentration, as if she were somehow guiding the cells through sheer force of will. Integration beginning, Dr. Martinez announced, watching the real-time brain scans. I'm seeing immediate cellular activity in the damaged regions. Over the next several hours, they watched in amazement as the modified Calorian stem cells began to establish connections with Marcus's existing neural tissue. The dead zones in his brain started showing signs of new growth and electrical activity. It's working, Dr. Threnody said with evident satisfaction. The cells are not only surviving, they're actively regenerating damaged pathways. By the end of the day, Marcus was showing significant improvement in motor function and cognitive response times. The tremor in his hands had diminished noticeably, and the constant headaches that had plagued him for months were beginning to fade. How do you feel? Zara asked as they recovered in adjacent beds in the medical bay. Like I've been given my life back, Marcus said honestly. Zara, I don't know how to thank you for this. You do not need to thank me, she replied. Seeing you healthy again is thanks enough. Dr. Martinez approached their beds with the latest test results. The neural regeneration is exceeding all our projections, she reported. At this rate, Marcus should see continued improvement over the next several weeks, possibly even months. And Zara? Marcus asked. Any signs of complications from the extraction? My cognitive functions appear intact, Zara said with relief. though Dr. Threnody wants to monitor me for several more days to be certain. As the station's night cycle began, Marcus lay in his bed contemplating the miraculous turn his life had taken. Just weeks ago, he had been preparing to die alone, convinced that protecting Zara from his illness was the kindest thing he could do. Now, thanks to her courage and scientific brilliance, he had hope for a future he had thought was lost forever. But more than that, he had learned something profound about the nature of friendship and sacrifice. Zara had risked her own well-being not just to save his life, but to preserve the bond between them. In doing so, she had demonstrated a kind of love that transcended species barriers, the willingness to share both burden and hope with someone who mattered. It was, Marcus realized, the most human thing he had ever witnessed, performed by someone who wasn't human at all. 2 months after the procedure, Marcus stood in his laboratory performing complex calculations that would have been impossible during the worst days of his illness. His hands were steady, his cognitive functions sharp, and the debilitating symptoms of Kiernan's syndrome had become nothing more than an unpleasant memory. But the true miracle wasn't just his recovery. It was what their success had unleashed across the galactic research community. "Marcus, you need to see this," Zara called from her workstation, her bioluminescent patches flickering with excitement. She had recovered completely from the stem cell extraction, showing no lasting effects from the procedure that had saved his life. Marcus joined her at the communication display, where messages from medical researchers across 12 different worlds were streaming in. Word of their breakthrough had spread through the Galactic Medical Council, and the response was overwhelming. Dr. Venchak from the Altarian Medical Institute wants to collaborate on neural regeneration for their species' memory disorders. Zara read from one message. Dr. Chen Talaris from the Rigelian University is requesting our protocols for treating spinal cord injuries in their population. Look at this one, Marcus said, pointing to another message. The Centauri Medical Collective wants to establish a permanent interspecies medical research station. They're offering to fund the entire project. In just 2 months, their experimental treatment had evolved from a desperate attempt to save one life into a revolutionary approach to neurological medicine. The combination of Calorian biotechnology and human medical techniques was opening new possibilities that neither species could have achieved alone. Dr. Martinez appeared in their laboratory doorway, carrying a tablet loaded with official communications. "I hope you two are ready for some big changes," she said with a smile. The Galactic Research Initiative has formally approved the establishment of the Marcus Chen Zara Institute for cross-species medical research. Marcus and Zara looked at each other in amazement. "They're naming it after us?" Marcus asked. "The board unanimously agreed that your work represents the most significant breakthrough in interspecies medicine in the past century," Dr. Martinez explained. "They want you to lead a permanent research facility dedicated to developing treatments that combine the best of multiple species medical knowledge." Zara's head tendrils curled with what Marcus now recognized as overwhelming joy mixed with responsibility. "This is beyond anything I imagined when we began this project." "It gets better," Dr. Martinez continued. "They've also allocated funding for clinical trials of your neural regeneration protocol. There are already volunteers from 6 different species who suffer from degenerative neurological conditions." Over the following weeks, their small laboratory was transformed into a bustling research center. Scientists from across the galaxy arrived to study their techniques and develop new applications for cross-species medical treatment. Marcus found himself working alongside researchers whose physiologies were as different from humans as Zara's, yet who shared the same dedication to healing and discovery. One evening, as they reviewed the latest test results from their expanded research program, Marcus realized how profoundly their work had changed both of their lives. Not only had Zara saved him from a terminal illness, but she had inadvertently launched a new field of medicine that would benefit countless beings across the galaxy. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had respected my wishes and left me alone to die?" Marcus asked during a quiet moment in their shared office. Zara looked up from her research notes, considering the question seriously. "I think about it often," she admitted. "Not just the loss of your life, but the loss of everything we have discovered together. All the people we will be able to help in the future. None of that would have been possible if I had accepted your decision to face your illness alone. It makes me wonder about the other Opportunities we miss when we try to protect people from difficult truths, Marcus said thoughtfully. How many breakthroughs never happen because someone decides to suffer in silence? Among my people we have a saying, Zara replied. Shared burdens become shared wisdom, and shared wisdom becomes shared strength. I think your species has a similar concept, that helping others makes both the helper and the helped stronger. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Dr. Threnody. On the Calorian homeworld, the elderly scientist's image appeared on their holographic display, her expression serious but hopeful. Zara, Marcus, I have remarkable news, Dr. Threnody announced. The Calorian Medical Council has completed their analysis of your treatment protocols. They are recommending that cross-species medical collaboration become a standard part of our medical education system. This was unprecedented. The Calorians were one of the most medically advanced species in the galaxy, and for them to formally acknowledge that collaboration with other species could improve their own medical capabilities was a revolutionary shift in thinking. More importantly, Dr. Threnody continued, we have identified 17 different Calorian neurological conditions that might benefit from adaptation of your techniques. We would like to begin immediate collaboration on developing treatments. After the communication ended, Marcus and Zara sat in amazed silence. Their personal struggle against his illness had somehow evolved into a transformation of galactic medical practice. Zara, Marcus said finally, I need to tell you something I should have said months ago. She turned to look at him with curiosity. When I was first diagnosed with Kiernan's syndrome, I felt like my life was ending before I had accomplished anything truly meaningful. He continued, I was just another researcher, doing good work but nothing that would really matter in the long term. And now? Zara asked gently. Now I realize that the most meaningful thing I could ever do was trust someone who cared about me enough to share the burden of my illness, Marcus said. Everything we've accomplished, all the people we'll be able to help in the future, it all started with your refusal to let me face my problems alone. Zara's bioluminescent patches glowed with a warm, steady light. Marcus, do you remember what you told me when I first arrived on this station? You said that humans believe the best discoveries come from working together, sharing different perspectives and knowledge. I remember. What you taught me about collaboration and trust, those weren't just lessons about research methodology. They were lessons about what it means to truly care for another being. When I refused to let you suffer alone, I was applying everything you had taught me about the value of partnership. Marcus smiled, understanding the deeper truth in her words. So in a way, you saved my life using principles I had taught you. And in doing so, we discovered that the best of both our species, human compassion and Calorian knowledge, could create something greater than either could achieve alone. That night, as Marcus walked through the research station that had become a center of galactic medical innovation, he reflected on the strange path that had led him here. A terminal diagnosis had seemed like the end of his story, but it had actually been the beginning of something far more important than he had ever imagined. He had learned that sometimes the most human thing you can do is accept help from someone who isn't human at all. And in accepting that help, in trusting Zara with his life and his fears, he had helped create a legacy that would outlive both of them. The cold distance he had tried to maintain to protect her had nearly cost them everything, but her courage in refusing to accept that distance had saved not just his life, but potentially thousands of lives across the galaxy. It was, he realized, the most beautiful example of what could happen when different species learn to truly trust each other with their most vulnerable moments. And it had all started with a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is allowing them to help you when you need it most.